Hey everyone. We've made it a week into looking at more inclusive practices, and I thought I would take just a minute and respond to some of the questions that people have asked, as well as give you sort of a recap of all the things that we've been trying to peel back and uncover this week, and then also a preview to what's coming up. I've got my notes because I've got lots of things I want to share with you and lots of thoughts coming and going in my mind. So, for those of us who don't know each other, I'm Christy, and I'm so glad that you are in our short term Facebook group. I'm also super excited for those that'll be able to join me live today. Feel free to make some comments and to let me know during or after the broadcast other things that you need or what would be more useful for this Facebook group. I'm in a new Facebook group myself, and it was like day 5, and I was like, oh wait, I haven't even looked at day 1's content. How can it possibly be day 5? So I feel you, and I know that my posts get really long. I tried to do the too long didn't read kind of acronym and say, here's cutting to the chase, but I know I post so much stuff. So if you haven't gotten the summaries already, make sure you're doing that because I try to whittle it all down and cut to the chase and say, here's the most important things. But speaking of not being long-winded and cutting to the chase, couple of things. So most of the things that people commented about when they joined the group and or contacted me about was the resistance they feel from other people. So they understood the self-reflection and the mindset before the methods and all of that, but they're like, but there's this person next to me who has a bad attitude, right? So it's like maybe not even a bad attitude, but there was this lack of openness or this lack of willingness or this lack of fill in the blank, right? There's all this resistance. I sometimes talk about it that you can't get other people to drink your Kool-Aid. It's like, but it's the best Kool-Aid ever. How can you not drink it? And for those of us who love diversity and love children with like the most funky, challenging sets of temperaments and behavioral repertoires, we're like, what is up with that? But each of us has sort of a different threshold. And so one of the things I wanted to mention was that just like when we're strength-based with children and families, we need to be strength-based with ourselves and with our colleagues and or our staff. So let's start with ourselves because it always starts there, right? So what are your strengths when it comes to being open? When are you like not resistant? And then the flip side, when are you not open and when are you resistant? If you can start to really think about those times and become much more self-aware of your own resistance, and we talk about this all the time, right? So like Nancy and Lisa know all about the shark music, but when we are aware of that we have shark music playing, just the other day I was doing something, and at the break a friend of mine came up and said, I just need to let you know there's a group of people who don't agree with what you're talking about. And I was like, what? How can I not agree with what I'm talking about? This is so important and this is so right, because of course I'm right, right? And oh my gosh, the sharks just invaded to the point where I couldn't even hear what my friend was telling me about what the other group was feeling. I finally had to say, okay, can you repeat that? Because I literally shut down. I just went into freeze mode. So it's that sort of thing to say that once again, that we all have shark music. So when people are resisting hearing our message, when people are resisting maybe a little kid and it just pushes their buttons, just take a step back and say, what can I do to lower the shark music for this person? Don't try to push faster, higher, louder, right? Don't try to get on that progression of inclusion and say, why are you barely at intolerance? You should be clear up here at love. Think about what can you do to remove some of that shark music so that person has some space and some room. I also sort of want people to understand that not everybody gets along. Not everybody's friends, right? We say it all the time in preschool. Sit by your friends, share with your friends, give one to your friends. We're all friends. No, we're not. And children kind of know that too. And so what we want to do is build compassion and empathy. And that's those steps up beyond tolerance. But we don't do that by saying that everybody has to love everybody. We just have to understand everyone, right? We have to understand other perspectives. And maybe we have to reach out to others with a differing perspective, even when they're the least lovable. And so this might be kids in a classroom who really push the triggers of an adult. How can we create some space? How can we reframe how they approach that child? So that's kind of long-winded, but it was all about this sort of like, people won't drink my Kool-Aid. General ed and special ed don't see eye to eye. There's so much resistance. Nobody wants to have this kid in the classroom, whatever. It all came back to, we were all hearing so much shark music that we couldn't find some space to find out what are our strengths, where do we have common ground, and then that starts to lead us into, if we can start to see each of us as a triangle and children as a triangle, we stop labeling them. We stop labeling them so much as what their diagnosis is, or if they belong to the OT or the SLP or the SPED teacher or the gen ed or the Title I or the pre-K or the Great Start. Right? They're 4. And so they're fabulous. And we don't need to give more labels than just those 2. A 4-year-old who's fabulous. So how can we start to stop labeling quite as much and start looking at every child as a triangle? So those were some of the big themes. And so I see a couple of you are commenting that you're having a little bit of trouble with the bandwidth today. Don't worry, I'm recording it. I will put it on YouTube and you can watch it back later, listen back while you're driving around. But the bigger theme that I want you to walk away with today is, not only is every child a triangle, but every adult is a triangle. So when you think about resistance, when you think about Kool-Aid, when you think about strengths, remember that not everybody has a really confident level to work with kids with certain labels. So I know for me, I know people are experts in working with kids with autism. And so sometimes I hear a little bit of shark music when I think, oh, the kid has autism. I don't know that I'll know what to do. But when I can channel my friend Barb Avila and go, they're a kid, right? I'm like, yeah, they're 4, right? Yeah. Oh, right. I know what fabulous 4-year-olds do, right? But if I get swung into that idea of they have autism, then the sharks come, and then I start lacking in my confidence, and then I'm like, I don't know, we're not going to be good friends because you're not going to enjoy what I have planned. So anyway, that's all to say that some of the things that people asked about in this first week about mindset before method was, what do I do when my mindset's good, but I got this friend next to me that's not so great in terms of their attitude, their approach, their openness. And so my recommendation is to be strength-based, to always be aware of your own shark music so that you can have enough reserve to help someone recognize their shark music, then build upon where they are currently. If you're only at tolerance, don't try to move all the way to love, right? So channel Vygotsky and say, how can we take one step forward? Oftentimes taking one step forward is removing the labels and the barriers and the baggage that might be causing the shark music. So what can you remove for that person to create space for them, to create openness? And one of the things that we talk about is triggering the positive emotional attractor. So I won't go into that today, but I posted a blog on our Facebook about triggering the positive emotional attractor and how you can really do that, because it then creates openness where there may have been resistance. So that was the first kind of chunk of what I wanted to share this morning, this afternoon, depending on what time zone you are in. But that sort of was all what this week was about, was getting our mindset in a place, just being aware of what our own beliefs are. And then it sort of morphed into the themes around relationships. And so I'm going to also remind you that if you're a coach, if you're a supervisor, if you're faculty supporting and supervising pre-service students, if you're a veteran teacher or you're a therapist who takes on a leadership role in your building, this is working with other adults. What are your relationships? I all the time do professional development at the beginning of the year, and at the end of the session, somebody will be like, oh, we have new staff here. Let's say hello to them. And I'm like, oh, crap, we've been here all day together, and no one has welcomed these people. No one has sort of said, these are the ropes. This is what we do. And so think about how strong are your relationships with those that you want to drink your Kool-Aid. So just like we think about relationships with children and relationships with families, your relationships with your colleagues, with your staff, with those that you are mentoring or coaching, you got to spend time fostering the relationship. So So I shared 10 essentials for building strong relationships. And those we talked about for children, but they go children to children. So some of you said, well, my barrier to inclusion is really getting interactions between children. So what are we purposefully doing to promote friendships and to promote relationships between children? And so that will be some of our methods we'll take on this coming week. We'll intentionally look at how do you form friendships. But more importantly, as you're thinking about getting others to drink your Kool-Aid, what are you doing to form strong relationships? So look at those 10 essentials and say, how would those apply in my work as a coach, as a mentor, as a co-teacher? Maybe you have a parent in your classroom and there's a lot of shark music between the two of you. Maybe they're not really thrilled about being assigned to early childhood and you're really pining for your para that you had for the last 10 years who retired, and now you have this new relationship to forge. If you're coaching a new co-teaching team, right? We put two teachers together and said, go forth and change the world. What have we done to forge a strong relationship between those two co-teachers, especially if one is gen ed and has a whole history and tradition and set of beliefs, and another is special ed who might have a very different tradition and set of beliefs? Where have we asked them to come together to see where they have common ground? Where have they talked about, this is what I'm strong at. What are you strong at? This is what causes my shark music. What causes your shark music? When have we given time for those co-teachers to form and forge those strong relationships? So make sure you look at those 10 essentials for building strong relationships because they work across the lifespan. So that takes us to where we headed down the road for the next couple of weeks. I'm literally headed down the road to head to Alaska tomorrow. Woohoo! So I will be sending stuff from there, and with that in my mind as I hang out and work with some amazing special ed and gen ed teachers and leaders across the Anchorage area. But be thinking about what you want more of. So let me give you a sense of what I'm going to cover, and then you can sort of say, that's not really what I expected. I am going to try to be a little bit shorter. I don't know that it's possible, but I'm going to try so that when you look at the Facebook, you're not like, oh, read more. I don't have time to read more. I'm just at a red light. I only have 2 seconds, right? No, you're not at a red light. Take a nice deep breath at a red light. Don't check your phone. But if you can carve out 10 minutes this week and come into our Facebook with nothing else, what would you like to see there? So this next week, what I'm anticipating is moving into the methods a little bit more than this kind of big stuff about getting people to drink our Kool-Aid. And I thought I would do what I call a clean sweep. So many of our colleagues, if not ourselves, are setting up classrooms last week, this week, coming weeks. So the clean sweep analogy is this idea of what do we really bring into the learning environment? What can we remove from the learning environment? And what in the learning environment is forging relationships and ensuring that every child is thought of as a triangle? So I really want people to look at the classrooms this week with the mindset that we talked about last week. So if you believe in the power of play, if you believe in that you need to forge relationships, if you believe in every child as a triangle, look at these learning ecologies and say, has that belief manifested? Have we developed a routine? For example, if you have behavior charts, which I'm completely against, which we'll talk about probably next Saturday, that might be in conflict with the idea of building solid relationships that are built on compassion and that every person is a triangle. So you might want to go, what? I love behavior charts. They're fabulous. Where did that belief come from? Are they really serving you? And are they in line with your other beliefs around every child being a triangle, around relationships being most important? And are they allowing you to move up that progression of inclusion? So these are just things we ask ourselves, right? We don't stop moving away from self-reflection as we move into methods. We continue to use our beliefs to decide which methods, under which circumstances, for which children. So next week is all about clean sweep. So I thought we would talk about mindfulness. Our amazing fellow revolutionary, Laura Fish, and I did a couple podcasts on what mindfulness is. It's not just, carving out 5 minutes of doing deep belly breathing at circle time, though that would be fabulous. How do we really look at quality early childhood practices and know that they are aligned? So when we do things like self-talk and parallel talk, how is that aligned with mindfulness, and how does that build children's brains? So I better look at my notes so I don't forget. We're also going to look at reducing stressors. Several of you said your challenge is getting accepted or acceptance for a child, and I'm guessing especially for one that's kind of funky and presents some challenging behaviors, maybe one that cries the whole day or screams or just doesn't want to be a part of the group in some way. We're going to talk about early childhood stressors and our role in reducing and removing them as we get into our methods. We're also going to dig deep into strategies that are evidence-based from my colleague Lori Meyer, that is all about forging friendships. So some of you may have seen those blogs before, but we're going to revisit how do we forge and ensure friendships between and among children. And then we're going to look at self-correcting materials, functional materials, and relevant materials. So that's where that clean sweep comes to a close, that any toy, object, material, loose parts or otherwise, if I put it in the classroom, is it relevant? Is it functional? And does it promote independence? So if we want to have inclusive environments, we need materials there that support functionality, relevance, and independence. So we're going to really dig into all that. That's next week. Then the third week, we're going to get radical. We're going to talk about how circle time can be a choice. So some of you have already started that journey. We're going to go deeper and say, how's that working for you? What does it mean to be a choice? What does it look like? How do I support children to have a choice? Second, we'll talk about snack time and how that's intricately tied to children's responses to stressors and self-regulation, and how we might need to have a more open snack policy. So that will be a little radical, and if that's not radical enough, we're going to talk about doing away with calendar time. So just as everybody got their rooms all set up, I'm going to go in and I'm going to get rid of circle and snack and calendar. And it's like, holy crap, how does that make life more inclusive? So we'll talk about how are those potential barriers to inclusion. If they're working, we keep them. But if they are adding to the exclusion of some learners, then we need to really rethink, why do we do that practice? So week number 2, all about clean sweep, both internally and externally, but really looking at the environment as a third teacher. So we're going to channel Maria Montessori, we're going to channel Reggio practices, and we're going to get into loose parts, but we're going to always say, are they functional, relevant, and promoting independence? Third week, we're going to get deep into some of our traditional practices. 3 of them in particular: circle, snack, and calendar. And then, because we can't leave a week without talking about these 2 things, we'll finish out week 3 talking about the red train and IEP-worthy goals. Because if you don't have IEP-worthy goals, inclusion is really hard to pull off. It's really hard to create quality embedded learning opportunities for funky goals. So, that's what I have planned. I will be in Alaska next week, and then the great state of Virginia, and then Michigan. So I'll have new good conversation starters and ideas, but I definitely want to hear from you all in terms of what do you need more of, less of, better support around, more specifics, ideas, better Kool-Aid to hand out to people. So that's what I've got for you today. Be sure to post in our Facebook or private message me or email me or ping me or post, poke, whatever you do, right? And let me know what you need. But keep in mind that relationships matter across the lifespan. Those 10 essentials are good things to build relationships. Each of us is a triangle. Our colleagues are triangles, and children are triangles. That means that the shark music can come at any time. So we have to be always vigilant. And then we want to be promoting and triggering that positive emotional attractor by being really strength-based and working from where people are and taking them to that next zone of proximal development, right? Not too far, not full inclusion, everybody loves it, we're excited about it, but how can we get one more step closer towards empathy and compassion and love? So on that note, I will have This has been recorded for those of you who are just popping on. I'll upload it to Facebook. You can watch it back in our Facebook group. I will upload it to YouTube and put it in the weekly summaries, which will go out tomorrow. So tomorrow you'll get all this past week at a glance, plus this live recording. And then next week, be ready for a clean sweep. So thank you to each of you for being a part of our group and for joining me today. And if you need anything, let me know. Thanks.